Okay, so right now we're going to talk about amplification and sensory systems. So we're going to talk about hearing aids and some assisted listening devices. So the goal with amplification systems is to find something that fits the patient's needs and their capabilities. And the idea behind hearing aids or cochlear implants, which we'll talk about in another chapter, assisted listening devices also, is to bring speech back to the person that has lost their hearing as best as we can. So providing hearing aids can be challenging, or it could also be very successful and rewarding, but it depends on who you're working with. So young children can be a challenge. If people have multiple handicaps, adults that are in denial of treatment aren't always the easiest to convince about the quality of a hearing aid and the effectiveness of a hearing aid, and those with declining mental and physical capabilities. So what hearing aids are, at the end of the day, they're just simply miniaturized, personalized public address systems. So at their most basic, hearing aids have a receiver, they have a microphone to pick up sound, they have an amplifier to amplify the sound, and they have a receiver to send the sound into the ear. So at the end of the day, all hearing aids can do is amplify the sound and then send that sound into the cochlea. The problem, though, and the reason why hearing aids aren't always effective, or the reason why people complain about hearing aids, is because the cochlea is damaged. So people that get hearing aids likely have presbycusis. And if you remember, presbycusis is age-related hearing loss, and it's related to the outer hair cells of the cochlea. And as we age, or as we have noise exposure, those outer hair cells get damaged and they get destroyed, and they don't process sound so well. So what hearing aids do is they amplify sounds, but if the cochlea is so damaged and destroyed that it doesn't have enough outer hair cells to process those sounds coming in from the hearing aids, the person is still going to struggle with hearing. So hearing aids are not like glasses. It's not like a magic bullet where you put them on and all of a sudden you can hear like you did when you were 18, or you could see like you did when you were 18 with glasses. However, hearing aids are certainly better than they ever have been. So we now have digital hearing aids with improved clarity. We have hearing aids that can separate out noise from the signal. So if you remember from hearing science, noise is a mess, and speech sounds tend to be complex and periodic, and they have a nice pattern to them. So we now have hearing aids that are able to remove the mess of noise from the speech and only amplify the speech, not the noise. You can understand that that's a big advantage to people with hearing loss. Hearing aids also have compression circuitry, so they reduce loud sounds. If you remember, with presbycusis, it's not just that a patient has trouble hearing soft sounds, but their outer hair cells are so out of whack that loud sounds become uncomfortably loud much earlier than they would for a person with normal hearing. So I spoke about this a little bit with the dynamic range when we were talking about speech recognition. I have normal hearing. I can comfortably hear sounds up to 100 decibels, 105 decibels. I can handle that. Someone with presbycusis will probably feel very uncomfortable at that level. In fact, they might feel very uncomfortable at 90 decibels. So hearing aids have this compression circuitry where they can take loud sounds and compress them and make sure that loud sounds don't get up to 90 decibels, or they don't get up to that level where the person is going to feel very uncomfortable. Digital hearing aids also have directional microphones. So they have microphones that pick up sounds coming directly at the person as opposed to sounds that come from behind or at the side. So this helps people hear what's important, what's coming towards them, less than what's behind them. When you're fitting someone with hearing aids, binaural amplification is really the way to go. We have two ears for a reason. The two ears work together. So they work together to binaural summation. Two ears work together and they increase sounds by about 6 decibels. And there's binaural squelch. The two ears work together to squelch background noise. And you have 2 ears for localization. Localization is the sound coming from my right or my left, front or behind me? So even though hearing aids are very expensive, I still recommend that you get 2 hearing aids. For example, a few years ago, my dad purchased 1 hearing aid because that was what was covered for his health insurance. And he had many expectations for this hearing aid, but he was unhappy at the end of the day because his expectations were unrealistic and he only had 1. The following year, he was able to purchase a second hearing aid. With the second hearing aid, he did much better. So having 2 hearing aids makes a big difference. There are very traditional, big behind-the-ear hearing aids, in-the-ear hearing aids, and completely in-the-canal hearing aids. The larger the hearing aid, the more powerful the hearing aid. The smaller the hearing aid, the less powerful. So big hearing aids would be recommended for people that have really severe hearing losses. Littler hearing aids can work with someone that has more mild hearing loss. So behind-the-ear hearing aids can be used for mild to profound hearing losses. Behind-the-ear hearing aids are very good for children. So behind-the-ear hearing aids are big and they are durable and they are cost-effective because as the child grows, all you have to do is change the mold. You don't have to get a new hearing aid every few years as the child gets bigger and bigger. So behind-the-ear hearing aids are big, they are powerful, and they are durable. There are newer behind-the-ear hearing aids called open-fit hearing aids. And with an open-fit hearing aid, it's just a very little part. It's much smaller than a typical behind-the-ear hearing aid, and it sits behind the ear. And then there's a small plastic tube that enters the ear canal, and it's open. So the ear is not occluded, therefore it's comfortable. It's cosmetically appealing. They're hard to see. They're, very discreet, and they're appropriate for someone with a mild to moderate severe hearing loss. In the ear hearing aid, in the canal, completely in the canal, these are your more traditional hearing aids where they occlude a portion of the ear canal. Remember, the smaller they are, the less powerful they are. They have little tiny batteries. All hearing aids are charged. They all run on batteries, these little tiny batteries that you can purchase at a drugstore. And the battery needs to be replaced about once a day. So the batteries, because they're so tiny, they drain pretty quickly. Selecting a hearing aid for an adult. It is the adult's decision. So I remember my grandfather had a very, very bad hearing loss. But at the end of the day, he wanted the smallest hearing aid that was made. So he would have benefited more from a big, powerful behind-the-ear hearing aid, but what he wanted was the small one. So I couldn't have convinced him to get a bigger one. It's his decision. So hearing aids depend on the patient's motivation, their age, their physical limitations. So with these very tiny hearing aids, they can be hard to get in and out of an ear. When I was doing research, I had a mold made for my ear canal. And I have normal dexterity. I don't have arthritis. I have good vision. And I would fumble a little bit getting those hearing aids in and out of my ear canal because they're fit specifically to a person's ear canal. So if a person has any dexterity issues, you might want to consider whether or not they'd be better off with a behind-the-ear open fit as opposed to an in-the-canal hearing aid. Also, financial resources. These hearing aids would be very expensive. I don't know exactly, but they could be at least $1,500 to $3,000 each. So you're asking a person to take on a big burden when they purchase hearing aids. And sometimes these people may be on fixed incomes. So it would be inappropriate for an audiologist to recommend a hearing aid that a person could not afford. Hearing aids are big business. There are different companies that sell hearing aids. So just like there's Ford and Chevrolet and Nissan, there are Starkey and Phonak and Oticon. And within each of those companies, they have different levels of car, so, or different levels of hearing aid. So Ford has a Ford Escape, then it has an Explorer, and then it has an Expedition. So same thing with hearing aids. There's a variety of things that you could recommend for your patient, and you should consider the patient's financial resources. The general goal of any hearing aid is to make soft sounds louder, moderate sounds understandable, and keep loud sounds from becoming uncomfortably loud. For children, behind-the-ear hearing aids, those bigger, stronger, more durable hearing aids, they're more cost-effective for children, and they work better. So hearing aid acceptance and orientation. There are some reasons why children might be resistant to hearing aids because, let's say, they're physically uncomfortable, they don't sound well, or they're cosmetically unappealing. This could go for adults too. When you're working with children or adults, have them be involved in selecting the style of the hearing aid, the color of the hearing aid. So they sell all sorts of, same thing with cochlear implants for children. They sell bright colors. You could buy stickers for your hearing aids. You could buy stickers for your cochlear implants, just stuff to get the child involved so that the child is more accepting of the hearing aid and wearing the hearing aid. At the end of the day, I can't force an adult to wear a hearing aid, and if an adult doesn't want to wear a hearing aid, that's their choice. But for children that are still learning speech and language, they have to wear their hearing aids. They have to wear their hearing aids from the moment they wake up until the moment they go to bed. For children, it's very important that they have access to sound. So a child's acceptance of a hearing aid is critical for rehabilitation. So you have to be positive, you have to be excited. The speech-language pathologist, before you start any session, make sure the child's wearing their hearing aids. Make sure the hearing aids are working. So if you cup your hand over a hearing aid, it should whistle. The battery would whistle. Make sure they're working or else you're wasting your time. The family has to be involved. Everyone has to be involved, accepting and exciting of this hearing aid because children need to wear their hearing aids or cochlear implants. Adult acceptance might take a little bit longer. They have to have realistic expectations. They have to realize it's not a quick fix. They're not going to hear like they did when they were 18. And they have to get used to it too. So it takes, like I said, about 7 years to realize that you have a hearing loss. So during those 7 years, you lose sounds that are like annoying. So the sound of the refrigerator, like the sound of cars going past, the sound of a dishwasher, just like sounds that might be annoying to a person in the environment. So, as you get older and you lose your hearing, you kind of don't have to hear those sounds anymore. Then you get hearing aids, and all of a sudden you're hearing all the sounds that are great to life and all the sounds that are annoying to life. So it takes time to get adjusted to wearing hearing aids. So you have to tell that to your patients that, the last 10 years, you got away with not having to hear the radiator, but if you want to be able to hear your grandson, you have to also listen to the radiator. The audiologist is also going to spend time orientating the person to the hearing aid. And the more time you spend with your patient getting them used to the hearing aid, the more satisfied they're going to be, and the more likely they will stick to using it. So in the hearing aid orientation, you're going to show the person how to put it on and take it off, practice putting it on, taking it off, cleaning the hearing aid. So at the end of the day, you just take a tissue and you wipe the hearing aid clean. Then you put it in its case, taking the batteries out, putting the batteries in, basic troubleshooting. If one of the tubes is a little loose, you just show them the basic things that they're going to need to know to successfully use their hearing aid. Also go over how to use the telephone. So with the behind-the-ear hearing aids, the open fit, the microphone is above the ear. So if someone's going to speak on the phone, they have to hold the receiver of the phone just a little bit higher than their opening to their ear canal. You also want to go over insurance with the hearing aid and damage, and then recommend follow-up and monitoring. So if you're first giving someone a hearing aid, it's recommended that you bring them in again 2 weeks, then like a month later, maybe 3 months later. Just keep on top of your patients. Make sure that they're using their hearing aids correctly, that they're using them often and getting used to them, and that they're satisfied with their hearing aids. Cochlear implants are an alternative to hearing aids. They are for patients that have very little hair cell activity, very little healthy hair cells. So with a cochlear implant, an electrode array is inserted into the cochlea. Whatever hearing remained in that cochlea is now destroyed by the cochlear implant, and the auditory nerve is directly stimulated electrically. So cochlear implants are different from hearing aids. Hearing aids amplify sounds. Cochlear implants directly stimulate the cochlea. They electrically stimulate the cochlea. Assisted listening devices can be used in addition to hearing aids or in conjunction with hearing aids and cochlear implants. So an assisted listening device might help improve the background noise of a place. It might help reduce the reverberation. A very common assisted listening device is a FM system. If you're working in a school, you might see children wearing FM systems. So with an FM system, the teacher wears a microphone and she speaks into the microphone. Her voice is transmitted through radio waves to the listener who's wearing a receiver. So the teacher's voice, wherever she is in the room, goes directly to the child. And they could have an FM system a speaker that sits on the child's desk, or you could have a speaker that clips onto a child's hearing aid or a cochlear implant. And the idea is wherever the teacher is, the teacher's voice will be in the child's ear. So you'll have an improved signal-to-noise ratio. And it's not just children with hearing loss that benefit from these FM systems. All children benefit from FM systems. There's also an infrared system, which acts the same way as an FM system. They're in movie theaters. And then there are telephones with built-in amplifiers, and texting has been a great thing for people with hearing loss because now they can write messages and read messages, and they don't have to worry or rely so much on the phone.